Bradley Cooper, who is currently on the set of Paul Thomas Anderson, is going to set himself up for a shoot in 2021 where he's behind the camera, in front of the camera, and it's an interesting biopic. Again, it falls within a larger musical landscape, and he brings along one of the better actresses out there. So the film is called Maestro, and he's brought Carey Mulligan on board, and a little bit more investigating into these true life figures showed two really different creatures, if you will, and how is it going to assess that relationship is going to be. I think is going to be an interesting point. So let's dive into this Maestro biopic.
Sure.
Biopic.
So this is a film that has been in development for a while. It was actually set up at Paramount for a while, and then Netflix swooped in with their giant suitcases of money and grabbed it. But this is about the legendary Leonard Bernstein composer. It's going to span 3 decades, so it's going to be an epic story. It has, Josh Singer of Spotlight fame with the script, Bradley Cooper playing the lead role, and Carey Mulligan stepping in. And it's really cool to see Bradley Cooper emerge as a filmmaker. He is, I think anyone who sort of followed him a little bit outside of his movie roles knows that he is a student of film. He loves talking about film. He loves talking about the craft. So this is another big step for him in a project that for a while had some competition. For a while, Jake Gyllenhaal had his own Leonard Bernstein film that had Cary Fukunaga attached to direct, but I would assume that that's no longer the case. I mean, just given the steam that this project is taking, I think that one is left in the dust.
You're correct on that. So Leonard Bernstein was an orchestra chef, and his take on classical music was to sort of like give it a different, I want to say almost urban cityscape, American vibe to it. So he's prolific on different levels. He wrote the score for On the Waterfront, and Carey Mulligan will play the wife character. So again, if we're touching upon 3 decades, that means we're going to get the aged-in process. But her character, Felicia, is quite interesting. How she was really proactive and a militant, and sort of took on social injustices and sort of like took her privilege and utilized it so that she can help out those that needed a voice. And so what I'm curious about is how the complexity of the actual screenplay and how we're going to essentially focus on not one but 2 characters and making it a double biopic. I'm getting a sense that we might see this here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you span 3 decades. You're going to get into a lot of stuff to talk about. So you're right. This could be 2 characters that are really investigated in great detail. And it should be said that Leonard Bernstein really brought, kind of classical music. I don't want to say to the mainstream, but he was almost like a household name in a way that most composers or conductors aren't really known. So there's that element of it too. There's an element of celebrity as well. So it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating subject. And I mean, Bradley Cooper, Carey Mulligan, it's a great duo. And they both have films on the horizon too. As you mentioned, Paul Thomas Anderson's film for Cooper, and Promising Young Women for Carey Mulligan, which was sidelined by the pandemic and still is without a release date. So they'll both be going into this film with a couple films to sort of like fill in the gap before we see this one.
Yeah. And it'll be fun to, in the case of Maestro, it'll be fun to see, like perhaps it'll be the the meeting point where they meet in 46 will then breed, like those next 3 decades are, I mean, for me, it's fun to see the 50s, 60s, 70s in cinema. So yeah, production design should be through the roof for that.
I'm Eric Lavallée. I'm editor-in-chief and site owner for IONCINEMA.com. And this is
Kevin Jagernauth, contributing writer for the playlist.
And together we are IndieSponge.